Help me out. I can't remember the name of my favorite YouTuber. She's in her mid-20s, blonde, cute face, although her teeth are slightly uneven, and has a mild Scottish accent. She makes videos about pretty much anything, and is very honest about the fact she's playing algorithm games to get more views and hopefully more followers. It's working, and she has, over 100,000 subscribers when I last checked. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? This is messing with my head a bit. Names are hard sometimes. I imagine a casual watcher might forget and think nothing of it, but I've been watching her videos religiously for a month, so I'm a bit concerned about the lapse. When I opened up the app this morning, hoping to watch her while I drank my coffee, I found no trace of her channel. And I really hope it's not been taken down. None of her videos are in my history, and she isn't under the list of subscribed channels. Tell me I didn't dream her. I just need a name to search. I noticed her uploads went back a few years, but she first caught my attention sometime at the end of March. She popped up in my recommended videos. The little rectangle caught my attention. There's an image of a girl biting into a pear, but the title was Eating a Dog's Heart Raw. The video, thankfully, was just a 2-minute clip of her eating a pear. ASMR type stuff. The title was never explained. In fact, she didn't say anything at all. She just looked into the camera and smiled with the juice running down her face. I liked this twisted sense of humor. I looked at some of her other vids. A lot of them are vlogs, relating funny things that happen to her. This girl has a real talent for getting herself in trouble. There are plenty of videos of her swearing at her cat. She loves them, really, as well as reviews of films and Netflix series she's watching, Let's Play gaming videos, and some more ASMR content. And most of them are completely normal. That's why the weird ones really stand out. I had watched about 7 videos when I found the next anomaly in the beautifully titled, The Time I Was Handcuffed to a Horse for 8 Hours. So in this one, she's telling this ridiculous anecdote with the usual view of her bedroom as a backdrop, and 3 minutes in, there's something in the window behind her. On the left, flashes of hair and skin, like the top of someone's head jerking in and out of view. The room is clearly on the 2nd floor, so I rationalized someone had come to clean the windows, but this person moves so quickly, so erratically. 2 minutes on in the video, and this is still going on, and she's still telling her story, oblivious. I was holding my breath watching this, waiting for her to notice, waiting to get a decent view of this person in the window to learn what was happening to them. For all the flurry of hair and forehead, occasional fingers and ears, the culprit never surfaces. Eventually, the individual does start banging on the window and scraping the bricks underneath, and all the while, the girl whose name I forget carries on with her story. She must hear the commotion, but she ignores it completely. Is this a friend of hers pulling a prank? Or is it a prank on me, the viewer? It didn't feel funny when a fist suddenly struck the glass and it cracked into a spiderweb pattern. After that, the struggle outside stopped short. Finally, she stands up, but instead of running to the window to see what happened, she slowly gets into her bed and goes to sleep. The video goes on for another hour, and it's just her asleep. I started skipping through videos after that, dragging the cursor along the minutes on the lookout for anything suspect in the preview window. There seemed to be roughly 1 unsettling video for every 15 normal ones. I'll detail a few more so you can tell me if any of this sounds familiar. One that's bizarre from the outset is titled Making a Cake. That's exactly what she does. It starts with her pouring flour haphazardly into a mixing bowl. I've watched it over and over. When she's added her ingredients and starts mixing, one of her nostrils seems to darken, and then a thick drop of blood swells beneath it. The motion of her arm soon dislodges this drop and it spills into the batter. A steady flow follows. Deep red splatters into the bowl, onto her shirt, her hand, the wooden spoon. This one reminded me of the head at the window. There's no way she hasn't noticed what's happening, and yet she carries on in her usual chirpy way. A friend of mine once broke his nose while playing rugby, and even his nose didn't bleed as much as hers in the video. It must be fake, like some clever effect or something. The blood just keeps coming and coming, cascading. She empties the contents of the bowl into the cake pan and it goes everywhere. There's more blood than mix. And all the while, she just talks cheerfully about how terrible baker she is and how she's praying this one works out. She never addresses the blood, but she does slur a word every now and then, a subtle touch. When the video cuts to the finished cake, most of the blood is blackened. She remarks that it's a fair attempt, and so she's proud of her work. I was relieved, but also a little disappointed when the video ended without her sampling it. I think you get the idea at this point. You can see why I thought to post my call for help here. Anyway, at one point I cursed my stupidity. There's no need to watch every video to find the hidden horror stories, as surely those would be the ones with the most views. Nope. I searched by popularity and the top 5 videos were all quite normal. 2 of them were about her Animal Crossing town. Luckily, the 6th was In the Field There Is a Fallen Man. This one set my hairs on end immediately. She uses that technique where you play a recording of yourself speaking backwards and then record yourself mimicking the backward speech and reverse that. You know what I mean? It comes out sounding warped. Anyway, in this distorted manner, she recites a poem. It's hard to make out the words at times, but I try to write it down as I was starting to suspect a secret code, a hidden meaning behind all these random horrors mixed in with ordinary posts. Oh, I just found my notes, so I guess I didn't dream her. I'll copy it here. In the field, there is a fallen mare. In the feed, there is a felon. In the seed, his feeble baby hairs, the seer, her beady glare. It wasn't the strange poetry that got me there. It was more just how intensely she looked into the camera. Like she could see me through the screen, across time. For a moment I convinced myself I felt her breath on my face. It was a breeze from my open window. That one was freaky and is perhaps the most likely to be recognized, but there's still one that disturbed me much more. This one was uploaded in November of last year, and I don't remember it having many views. It was just 20 minutes of her playing some indie game, a split screen showing the gameplay on one half, and her in her pajamas on the other. Nothing of note happens. She narrates the gameplay and makes some jokes. It's not the contents that are wrong. It's her. In this one video amongst hundreds of a healthy, attractive woman, is this one where she's halved in a body mass. Her cheeks are gaunt. Her hands are all white joints of bones. Her eyes are sunken, but it's definitely her. I know her face well enough at this point. I have to say, I panicked watching this one. When was it filmed in relation to the others? There are videos in which she looks totally fine, uploaded the day before and the day after this one. First, I told myself she has a stock of videos that she uploads gradually. But then in the video, she references events that match their upload dates. The game her emaciated version plays was definitely uploaded last November, a week before the upload. It's a really clever trick, however she did it. It really achieved this supernatural feeling the other videos never even came close to. So I need your help. I need to find what happened to her channel. I don't know what I'll do if I can't find it again. I'll openly admit, I'm obsessed. I want to preface this by saying that I'm not someone famous. I'm not a public figure or an actress on some show or the like. I'm your regular plain Jane. Come to think of it, that's what I'll call myself here. It started out when I was filling out a job application. I knew they would likely scour the internet for my name to see what I was up to before they would offer an interview. At least that's what my friends told me. This was a bit of news to me, so I just typed in my name in the search bar to see what came up. And the first result was this. www.jane, my last name, .fanfiction.com. I was a bit surprised, but as you can imagine, I first assumed that there must have been some fictional character who shared my name. Granted, my real name is nowhere near as common as Jane, but it wasn't out of the question that there might be a very popular character by that name. No one had ever mentioned this to me in real life, so mildly curious, I clicked on it to find out who it was. My heart skipped a beat as I was led to the site's homepage. Right there was a photo of me. No denying it. And to make it worse, I had never taken that photo. It wasn't one that I recognized, but since it was a photo of me outside my apartment, it had to have been taken in the last 2 years. I was smiling and looking off into the distance, though not at the camera, meaning someone had taken that photo of me without asking. There was text, of course, and that didn't make me feel any better. Welcome! We here are all fans of Jane, my last name, and we strive to function as both a fan website and a host for fan fiction related to her. In case you need any information regarding Jane, click on the links below. The links were labeled with years starting from the one I was born. I clicked on the first one, and it had information about where I was born, short paragraphs about my parents. It had information like when I first began to walk, what kinds of foods I was weaned onto, and even how often my mom breastfed me. Horrified, I went on to the next year, and this was even more detailed, with a babysitter mentioned who I didn't remember at all. There was a pet mentioned as well, a dog named Rocco that we took in who'd been with us since I was 2, even though I didn't even remember his early years. And so, as I went through it, I saw my life laid out before me. To put things into perspective, it took me 6 hours to just skim through all of it. And I'm sure in total it was over 150,000 words. And that wasn't all. There were links to other things like Jane's friends and Jane's family, which had less extensive but still very detailed things about my friends and family. Heck, some of them were things that I didn't even know. For example, the site said that my best friend in 2nd grade had stolen $15 from me but told me that someone else had taken it. The website noted that she was never found out, though. I strained my memory, and a part of that incident came back to me. But there were more recent things. My boyfriend in high school was apparently cheating on me for the entire duration that we were dating, though I did not know this. However, reflecting on it did make sense. Also, apparently my landlord was overcharging me for rent for my apartment by about $300. He had raised it last year, but according to the site, all of the other renters except for me protested at this, and none of them had their rents raised. This was all bad enough. But no one came to the site for this, it seemed. No, most of the site's activity seemed to be its fan fiction. There were over 500,000 stories in total, judging from the number displayed at the bottom of the fan fiction section. There were several categories, and intrigued, I opened a few. Many of them were harmless fun, I guess. There was a crossover section that I kind of thought was cool, where people put me in different fictional universes. It still unnerved me, but that was the least offensive part of the site to me. No, what really freaked me out were the other stories. Stories in which other people wrote about how my life would be in different scenarios. Some of them were wildly out of character or plausibility, like the ones where I joined the army, but that was the least of my worries. There was a strong shipping culture on the site, and I was shipped with several people from my life. I stopped reading those when I came upon an M-rated one which featured my brother and I. Now, I was furious. This was unacceptable. But what was I supposed to do about this? I was pretty sure that the site was breaking several laws, but how was I supposed to go after them? Sighing, I thought I'd deal with things one by one. First of all, I needed to give my landlord an angry call, and when I talked to him, he seemed to be shocked as to how I knew about the rent increase, and did ask me to tell him who told me about it. I skirted that, but before this could go any further, I saw that a new story had been posted on the site. This one also had an M rating. It was written as a self-insert story, in which the main character was stalking me and followed me to my apartment. And then they kidnapped me, though I was forced to spend time with them, and we grew closer. I didn't want to read it any further. It just made me want to vomit. I made an account and left a scathing review, calling out the person for how toxic they were. Before I could call the landlord again, there was a notification. I had received a private message from the author. "You dumb expletive. I am coming for Jane, and she will love me, and you will then know how wrong you are." I heard a loud knock at the door. I wasn't dumb to open it, of course, but I could see through the front camera that there was someone standing outside. Just like in the story, though, they had their arms behind them. I wouldn't normally consider this to be abnormal, but in the story, their hands were holding a wrench. "Open up," they called out. "I lost my dog. Could you help me a little?" The same line from the story. I called the police, but they said they're going to take some time to get here. They're getting more aggressive outside my door, and sadly, I don't have any weapons in my apartment. Stupid site mentioned that as well. I really hope the cops get here soon. The person left, but I have a feeling that they're just looking for something to help break down the door. Or they might be hiding out of view in ambush, so I just can't run out and call for one of the neighbors. I really hope help arrives soon. Hi guys, thank you so much for watching. Just wanted to thank my patrons, Tam B, Jen Miser, Sky Mara Ravenswood, Melissa Perez, Mr. Sankofa, Leaf Ninja, Roy Larimer, Mr. Creepypasta, Neon Scoundrel, and William Delphin. If you'd like to become a patron, join my Discord, or see my other social media, check out the links in the description below. Also, let me know how I can be praying for you. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
I was a police officer for many years, and I helped investigate and solve many different cases. Often the cases would be fairly standard police work, like breaking and entering cases, thefts, or fraud cases. Sometimes we would get more complicated cases, such as kidnappings or murders. Always these cases would have explanations, and they would rarely go unsolved. There is one case, however, that has always puzzled me. Other police officers think it was a fairly open and shut case, but I think differently. I think there was something more sinister going on. The following is a transcript of a police interview from years ago, before we all had phones and internet. It has always stuck with me, and you will soon know why. I don't really know if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm recently retired, so I'm going to do it anyway. So, here is the transcript of the case that has bothered me for longer than I'd like to admit.
Police interview, commencing at 9:35. Police officer conducting the interview is Detective Paul Watkins. Can you tell me exactly what happened?
I already told you, the adverts made me do it.
What exactly did they make you do?
You know what they made me do. You were one of the first officers on the scene. You saw the damage that I caused.
That is true. Well, can you tell me what you mean by the adverts made me do it?
They made me do it. They spoke to me through the radio. They made it sound so appealing. They made me want to do it. They sold it to me, and it's not the first time they've spoken to me either.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean they have spoken to you before? Can you explain more about that?
You know, the adverts would always play at the right time. I'd hop in my car feeling like eating a burger, and suddenly I would hear the advert for McDonald's on the radio. It would convince me to go and eat a burger. This would happen all the time. Whatever I felt like doing, the adverts on the car radio would convince me to do it.
Couldn't that just be a coincidence, though? Or maybe you only started to feel like something after you heard it being advertised on the radio?
Well, I did think that at first. I thought it was all just a big coincidence, but they started knowing more. They started knowing what I was thinking, what I was feeling. Adverts shouldn't be able to do that, officer. They should only be able to tell you which products to buy. They shouldn't be able to tell you how to think and feel.
What do you mean they knew how you were feeling and what you were thinking?
They shouldn't be able to tell you how to think and feel. The adverts started to tell me what to do in my private life.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, alright. Well, one day I got into this pretty big fight with my then husband. We argued for about half an hour, and he spent most of the time yelling at me, so I decided I needed to go for a drive. I needed to get out of there, so I hopped into my car, and the radio almost instantly started to play an advert. I try my best to recall this as accurately as I can, but I think that the advert said something like, "Having problems at home? Is your husband spending too much time getting angry at you? You deserve better than that, so why not try divorce? Divorce is the new product that is designed to give you a real sense of freedom and to make you feel like yourself again. So what are you waiting for? Try divorce today." I thought I was going crazy at first, but I knew what I was hearing. I wasn't going crazy. This advert was designed just for me, for my exact situation. I ended up divorcing him 3 weeks later after hearing the same advert almost every time I went out for a drive.
Could that not have been in your own head, though? It could have been yourself trying to justify or to accept your own feelings. You might have wanted to divorce your husband, and so you thought your radio was speaking to you, convincing you to do it. That's possible, isn't it?
It was not in my head, all right, officer? I know what I heard, and I don't need you telling me that I was going crazy.
I'm sorry. I just need to rule out all possibilities.
Well, I know what I heard, and it was not in my head. It was coming from my radio. Besides, I heard other ads that were designed for me.
Others?
Yeah. Not long after the divorce, I began to feel a bit happier, like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. The advert was right. I did feel better, so that's when I began listening to the ads more and taking their advice on board. The next advert that I heard was one that went something like, "Quit your job today and start afresh. I'm sure you are sick of working the same dead-end job and want to try something new. Well, now you can." So I quit my job the next day and I never felt better. I never managed to find a new job, but I had a bit of savings and managed to get a little bit of money from the divorce settlement, so I was doing okay. Once again, the adverts had convinced me to do something. Once again, I felt better for it.
So you kept listening to these adverts then?
Yeah, well, they seemed to be helping me, didn't they? It was maybe a week or so after I quit my job when I heard the next ad that caught my attention. It went something like this. Do you ever wonder what it is like to take a life? To suddenly cut someone's life short and watch them die? If you have, then we now have just the thing for you. Murder. A fun new trend that you would be crazy not to get involved in. At first I was very confused as to how this advert was allowed to be played on the radio, and I was also confused about how this applied to me. Officer, I had never wanted to murder anybody.
Did this advert play just once?
No, it played all the time. Constantly, it was on the radio. Every time I drove, I would turn on the car and straight away an advert advertising murder would come onto the radio. It would often be different, though. Sometimes it would say, "Try it today. Murder. It's simple, easy, and can be done right now." And other times it would say, "What are you still thinking about? There's nothing else to consider. Murder is just the thing for you." At first, I tried to block out the adverts. I tried turning down my radio or tried switching stations, but neither of those ideas worked. I couldn't turn it down and I couldn't change the radio station, no matter how hard I tried. In fact, I felt that the adverts got louder, not quieter. Soon it was unbearable. The adverts were so loud. I just wanted them to stop playing over and over again.
Is that when you finally gave in? When the adverts finally managed to sell you the product?
I was driving, and the adverts were blasting in my ears. Couldn't escape the sound of the voice in the advert saying, "Now is your chance. Now is the time to finally commit murder." I felt that my only option was to listen to the advertisement and to do what it said. I remember stopping vehicle at the traffic lights, waiting for the pedestrians to cross the street in front of me. And when I heard the advert blast through my car speakers, "Do it now. Just put your foot on the accelerator, and you can run down and murder everyone right in front of you." The advert was so loud and inescapable. You see, I didn't have a choice, officer, but to do what it said. I had to do it if I wanted the ads to stop.
So, is that your reasoning for running over and killing 4 people?
Yes. Look, I know you don't believe me, but that is the truth. The adverts made me do it.
Police interview suspended at 9:55.
Now I know what you are thinking. It was obviously all in her head. She was imagining the adverts and it was actually a voice in her head telling her what to do. Well, that's what I thought. That's what everyone thought. But that changed when I was investigating inside the suspect's car. I hopped inside the vehicle and that's when I heard it. The sound of static, the sound of a radio that wasn't quite tuned properly. The sound of a radio not quite being able to communicate to me. I thought this was strange because the keys weren't in the ignition, so I didn't think that the radio would be able to work. I didn't think too much of it though, and I moved my hand over to radio to turn it off anyway. That's when I noticed this car didn't have a radio. There was no radio installed in this vehicle, and according to the car's records, there never was a radio installed in this car. I really don't know how the suspect was able to hear all of the adverts, but I definitely heard the radio as well. I still don't know what to think about this case, but I think that something rather sinister is going on.
I've been a shy person for as long as I could remember. Preschool was the most daunting thing to me. When my mother dropped me off into that room full of kids, I sat in the corner and cried. The daycare worker would always try to get me to converse with the others, but I would staunchly refuse. They were all bigger than I was, and they were loud. So loud. Eventually, they just left me alone. Overworked and underpaid, they had to focus on getting the huge orange juice stain out of the carpet or having Jake stop pulling on Claire's braid. Bothering a well-behaved, albeit shy girl was not high on their list of priorities. I managed to get through a lot of my life this way. As a child, adults loved me. I never spoke out, was never disruptive in class. They patted me on the back and said I was mature for my age. I figured that as long as I kept my head down and did well academically, I would be able to get through life. Life had proven not to be that easy, though. Over the years, my social anxiety chipped away at me. Fear of people was a self-reinforcing cycle. The more I avoided them, the more I could pretend they hated me. And the more I thought they hated me, the more I would avoid them. It got to the point where I would sometimes take hours making laps in the grocery store, just mustering up my courage to face the cashier. I once got mugged, and I just let them take my wallet, full with $250 in cash, my ID, and my credit card. Because I was too afraid to call for help and make a scene. It's pathetic, I know. If that wasn't bad enough, college came, and I realized that I needed to make new friends. As if that wasn't bad enough, college came, and I realized I needed to make new friends, get a part-time job, and figure out what I was going to do with my life. I could barely talk to a single person without my voice quavering as if I were being held at gunpoint, let alone get employed. Things like this kept me up at night, and my fear was only exacerbated by insecurity. My parents were surgeons, and my older brother was in medical school. I knew if I didn't get my act together, I would be a disgrace to my family. I tried everything: exposure therapy, SSRIs, CBT, microdosing, even putting myself out there, as they love to say. All to no avail. I had just come to terms with the fact that this was just the way I operated. But one day, I found Lifepal, or Lifepal found me. At the time, I thought it was some form of divine intervention, that somebody finally listened and decided to save me. I was handed a flyer while walking home from class, which said, "Got social anxiety? We are here to help." Smiley face. Visit us at www.lifepal.com to learn more. I figured it was probably just a generic self-help site, a resource provided by the school so they could claim to care about mental health. But I decided I would check it out anyway. When I got home, I typed the website into my browser. Lifepal, a pal for life, smiley face. Read more. I probably should have clicked out the minute I saw that terrible slogan, but something possessed me to keep going. We know social anxiety can be hard. We understand, and we're here for you, which is why we've created a foolproof solution to get your life back. read more. Friends, teachers, advisors, therapists. With Lifepal, you won't need them anymore. Lifepal uses cutting-edge development in AI to seamlessly emulate any personality. Do you want nice to cheer you up on bad days, funny when you need a friend to talk to, tough when you need a firm but gentle push in the right direction? You can have any or all of these. Your Lifepal will be tailored specifically to you, guaranteeing the most effective results. Next. Lifepal is a chip we place inside your head, just through the back of your scalp. It connects to your neural network so it can gauge what situation you're in at all times and provide you the encouragement and advice you need no matter where you are. Lifepal is modeled off of neurotypical human behavior and highly curated to create a seamless user experience. Installation requires a non-invasive procedure that takes just 20 to 30 minutes to complete. The day of the procedure, you will have a consultation and take an assessment to mold the device to your personality. Once the device finishes calibrating, we will plant it in your head. Next. No more making a fool out of yourself in public. No more staying up at 3 a.m. thinking about that one thing you said in 7th grade. That struck a chord to me. No more being afraid. For just $499.99, you will be able to do anything you want, and you can do it now. We believe in you. The friends in your head. Smiley face. Important. Please do not attempt to remove the device, as doing so may cause permanent brain damage. Schedule your consultation now. I may have been sad and lonely, but I wasn't stupid. No way would I let some sketchy company with a name that was a portmanteau of the two most generic words you could think of have access to my brain, my entire livelihood. But things changed. My mother had gotten laid off, so I needed to get a job. Like, now. I filled out countless online applications, wrote what seemed like a million cover letters, and made numerous iterations to my very paltry resume. But come interview time, I could never get myself to go. I know, you're gonna think that I'm an idiot. And in hindsight, yeah, I really was, but please hear me out. I was desperate. My student debt was piling up and, well, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. Lifepal was my glimmer of hope, my new lease on life. As my social skills deteriorated exponentially for each day I spent alone, uttering not a single word to anyone, this seemed like the only way out for my despair-laden self. So, one sunny Monday afternoon, I found myself standing at a tall building, just a 30-minute bus ride from my apartment. I didn't know if it was my paranoia or what, but something seemed off. The deep obsidian-colored building stood out against the blue sky like a sore thumb. I had used Google Maps to get to the area, but I didn't need to take a second look to recognize the signature, stark black. With a deep breath, I pulled the door open and walked inside. The first thing I noticed was the strange, modern sterility of it. Everything was either jet black or pure white. Did shadows exist in this place? A man's voice jarred me from my thoughts.
Hello, I'm Julien. You must be Ellen, right?
Yes. I'm here for my 4 o'clock appointment. God, how did I even mess this up?
Great. Dr. Levin will be with you shortly.
He smiled cordially. I had arrived 10 minutes early, so I didn't mind waiting, but Dr. Levin called me in before I got a chance to sit down.
I know you're worried about the procedure, Ellen,
she said softly. She sounded a lot like my mother when she tried to get me to sleep, her hushed tones blending in with the sounds of cars in the background.
but I assure you, it will not hurt, and you'll be good to go in no time.
Her eyes were warm, like pools of amber, and I suddenly felt much more at ease. But one thing didn't track. What about the consultation and the personality assessment? She laughed.
We already have everything we need.
I probably should have seen the red flags that were cropping up everywhere, but I guess I turned a blind eye. After all, I had already come this far. I couldn't go back to being the same old loser after all this.
All done?
Dr. Levin beamed. I was slightly disoriented, sat in a chair similar to one you would find at a dentist's office. I didn't even remember getting in it. I didn't even remember the start of the procedure at all. Was this the wisest choice? I should have run for my life the moment I stepped in this weird room. Heck, I shouldn't have even come here in the first place. But my fears were allayed when I heard a soothing voice. Well, it wasn't technically a voice. It was just like a normal thought in my head, but it was from this other lady, man? I wasn't really sure. It told me to say thanks to the nice lady, so I did. The following days consisted of me getting to know my Lifepal a little better. So, who are you?
I'm your Lifepal, silly.
You're gonna get rid of my social anxiety?
I will do everything I can to help you.
How can you help? You're not even real. I couldn't find the right words, but I did feel ridiculous talking to the air in front of me.
Reality is arbitrary. What matters is that I'm real to you, dear. I know what's bothering you right now. You haven't had an annual checkup in years. You're afraid that lump in your breast is malignant.
How do you know that?
I'm in your brain, of course. We are going to make a doctor's appointment. You and I. We are going to work together.
I froze. Phones scare me, and so did hospitals.
You will be fine, Ellen. No one will judge you. Besides, what will people think if you die of breast cancer because you were too scared to make a phone call?
I guess it was right. I picked up my phone. What if I mess up?
Don't be daft. Just follow my lead.
I dialed the number, praying that it would against all odds go to voicemail.
Hello, how may I help you?
Said a woman curtly on the other side. She seemed annoyed. I want to hang up.
Do not put that phone down. She's not annoyed at you. She's just jaded. Quick, tell her you want to make an appointment with your physician.
I would like to make an appointment with Dr. John Harris.
Perfect. You're doing great, darling.
Date of birth?
August 26, 1999.
Name?
Ellen?
Okay, you are scheduled for Tuesday at 3 p.m. Please come in 15 minutes early to fill out some patient forms. Any questions?
I was about to say no, but my Lifepal interrupted.
Tell her to get a Lifepal.
What?
Tell her that Lifepal is the answer.
No, thank you, I stammered.
All right, we'll see you then.
Shakily, I ended the call. I had actually done it. But
You didn't follow my lead.
I did it. I made the call.
You didn't tell her to get Lifepal.
Well, I don't see how that's relevant.
You were supposed to follow my lead, you worthless piece of crap. Also, your parents hate you because you're fat.
I stood in the room gawping at the thing's audacity like an idiot. I'd never received such personal attacks in my life. Were they just using me to sell their product? I wanted it out of me. Slowly, my hand made its way to the back of my head where I could feel a small protrusion. One quick motion and I would never have to deal with this again.
Darling, don't pull that out. I'm sorry for calling you fat. I will forgive you for that one mistake. But please, don't disobey me again. Okay?
I felt its saccharinity ooze within me. Okay. Besides this one weird condition, Lifepal had actually been great. I was doing well in my classes, making friends, and I even got a part-time job. For the first time in years, I could finally say that things were looking up. It wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, though. The voice stipulated that I hand out Lifepal flyers on campus for an hour every weekday. But I didn't sign up for this, I had said.
This is just part of the process, giving back to the community. Don't worry, I will tell you who to give them to.
I didn't pay much attention during the flyering. Like class, it was just an hour of the day that I trudged through impatiently, and it didn't require much work on my part. Lifepal would just say that blonde guy over there or that Hispanic girl, the one who looks like she hates her life, and I would wordlessly hand them the flyer. If they declined, Lifepal would force me to physically place it between their fingers or stick it in their backpack. It made me feel a bit like a nuisance, but Lifepal reassured me that I was doing them a favor. One day, one of the targets snapped at me.
I do not want your Lifepal scrat. I just wanted to walk home in peace without you sticking a flyer in my face every single day.
On instinct, I said, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. Tell Andy that Lifepal will change his life.
I mean, I'm not sorry, Andy. He looked at me, a mixture of confusion, disgust, and other things I still lack the emotional intelligence to comprehend.
Just screw off, okay?
He quickly walked off into the night. For the first time since getting the Lifepal installed, I felt ashamed. For an emotion that used to be extremely pervasive, it felt weirdly foreign in the midst of my self-improvement and progress. Lifepal, I don't think this is right.
Listen to me. You are doing nothing wrong. Andy is just a condescending prick. It's your duty to help him.
But everything had already turned sour. I think I'm done flyering for today.
You have no obligations for the rest of the day. Don't you dare go home. You are not done. He yelled at you because you're ugly and your face is asymmetrical. Your mother regrets giving birth to you. The divorce was your fault. Get back on campus.
I kept walking.
Those friends I helped you meet at the club, I helped you join. They secretly think you're annoying. They formed a group chat without you just to talk about how annoying you are.
I loudly ripped the remaining flyers in my hand and tossed them into the recycling.
Your chemistry professor thinks that your questions are really stupid, but he's too polite to tell you what an imbecile you are. In fact, he's considering dropping you from the class because you waste everyone's time during office hours.
I wasn't sure where exactly I was walking at first. I just knew I wanted to get away. But I then found myself on the bus to that ominous black building.
Listen to me. Listen to me, or else I will never help you again. Where would you be without me?
As soon as I got there, I barged in. Julien was at the front desk.
Ellen,
He exclaimed.
what brings you here again?
I need to take my Lifepal out. Now. Julien's smile dropped, but before he could respond, Dr. Levin appeared seemingly out of nowhere.
Are you unsatisfied with your services?
Take this out. I tried to look as menacing as possible, but I probably just looked like a fool.
I can't.
She said simply. Is this some joke? I just wanted to get better, not become part of a multi-level marketing scheme or whatever this is. I took several deep breaths. My mouth was running faster than my mind, and I hardly knew what words I was spewing out anymore. This is illegal, and I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you and use the money to burn this place down. She laughed. The sound echoed from the walls of the sterile white room like a broken record I couldn't turn off.
Lifepal really has worked wonders for your social anxiety. Look how bold you've become.
She walked toward me and stroked her nasty finger on my cheek.
Who are you gonna tell? The police? You'd have to call 911 for that.
I had been mocked all my life. But as I saw this woman leering at me, exploiting my vulnerabilities, I decided that this was my last straw. I lunged at her, but she was fast and surprisingly strong. All I could remember was hands around my neck. As I faded out of consciousness, the last words I heard were,
All you have to do is comply.
I haven't stepped foot out of my apartment in weeks. I refuse to be a walking advertisement for this sketchy organization. My life pal shouted obscenities at me, berated me about insecurities I didn't even know I had. I just blocked it out. It may have had my brain, but not my body. I still had the power. But soon, it started to threaten me, that they would come here and kill me in my sleep. That they had my mind already and everything I tried would be futile. At this point, I don't care if I die. I don't care about anything anymore because I realize I have nothing to live for. And I never did. But I need to relay this message to someone, anyone, who happens to see this. Anyway, that's my story. After I click post, I'm gonna rip this thing out of my head. I don't know what's gonna happen to me, but I've become exhausted of living like this. Lifepal has taken my life. I can hardly even think. I always hear these voices taunting me, mocking me, telling me if I don't comply, they'll take away my autonomy. I've gotten better at ignoring them, but they are persistent. So please, if you're reading this, please take this as a warning. They target the most vulnerable ones first, but soon they will get everybody, and we cannot let them win. Whatever you do, please get Lifepal. It's gotten rid of my social anxiety, and it will get rid of whatever plagues your mind. We understand what you're going through. Life is difficult, and we are here for you. At the end of the day, all you really need is a friend, and that is something we are able to provide you. Please visit our website for more information and schedule your
consultation now.
I used to be a normal person. I just want to get that out clear first of all. Yeah, I had a few strange hobbies, but when this all started out, I was just like your average Joe. One of my strange hobbies was browsing the web. Was browsing the deep web. It was mostly out of curiosity, let me assure you. I wasn't involved in anything shady and also made sure to take adequate precautions. One day I was just looking at random web pages when I stumbled upon a curious one. Hello there. Are you perhaps interested in buying other people's souls? I've been collecting people's souls for a very long time, and I have a bit extra. It was one of the most basic web pages that you could imagine, with only an address on and where to send the Bitcoin to buy one. I laughed when I saw this. I had seen my share of scams on the deep web, but this one was new. I went to close the window before something popped up on my screen. Hello there. I see you're browsing my site. My heart nearly froze as I saw it was a chat box. But I was sure the security measures I had taken were sufficient to prevent someone from tracking me or hacking into my computer. How did this pop-up appear out of nowhere then? Relax, I just noticed that you were going to leave without buying anything. It seems you haven't been convinced what I'm selling is real. Why not try a free sample? A simple yes and no dialog box appeared. Now, I should have clicked on no, but in my curiosity, I clicked on yes. Bad decision in hindsight, but I wanted to know where this was going, and I was a bit too confident in my own ability to shield myself from danger lurking on the internet. It's rather hard to explain what possessing a soul is like. You probably think that a soul is immutable, or indestructible, in other words. And you'd be right. In that moment, I could tell in my head that I held a single soul. But there was also a way for me to manifest it in the real world. It appeared as a tiny ball of light, no bigger than the smallest bone in your pinky. I reached out to touch it, and a flood of memories entered my head. The soul was of a woman by the name of Alexandra Cortez. She had not had a very happy childhood and had escaped her home when she turned 16. A few bad decisions involving drugs, and she had literally nothing left on her and was slowly dying. It was here that her memories became less clear. There was a strange shadow that I could see, but nothing clearer than that. Everything else that I could see had been as clear as if I was the one seeing it. But this figure was covered in what I can only describe as dark smog. She had sold her soul to this thing in exchange for money. The rest of her life was rather good. Not fantastic by any means, but it was still decent and paradise compared to what she had suffered earlier. It all ended one day when she was walking along a dark street corner and a man ambushed her. She died that night, though not before hours of torture at his hands. There was far more, of course. I had her entire life in my hands, but I only put down the important bits given her whole biography could fill up several books. That wasn't all, though. I could hear her thoughts as I held her soul in my hand. She was pleading, begging me to let her go. Now, you're probably wondering what the afterlife is like. I have to confess that I never found out, just that there was something beyond where souls could go to. After listening to her pleadings, I agreed to let her go. Much as I said earlier, I can't really explain how I let her go, just that I did. She vanished before me, and the light also went away with her, leaving my mind completely clear. I thought what had happened was just some sort of odd hallucination. Rather, I hoped that that was what it was. I didn't want to believe there was some monster collecting souls around on the internet. That was until 4 days later when I got an anonymous email linking back to that site. Hello there, I hope you enjoyed your free sample. Perhaps you would like to purchase another. We're having a sale now. The mail confirmed for me that it wasn't some weird fever dream, and after a moment's hesitation, I decided to make an actual purchase. I should have realized that something was wrong the moment I saw the prices. They were dirt cheap, which made very little sense given what I learned later on. I got the souls of 3 more women, and they were quite similar in many ways. Much like with Alexandra, I couldn't see the entity they sold their souls to properly. The amounts of money they got for their souls was quite staggering. I had barely paid a 0.00001% of that price. Again, that should have told me that something was off about this whole thing, but I was rather oblivious to the fact then. What I was more focused on was that they had all died in similar ways, by being ambushed by a man. They never saw his face, though, but they had all died in agonizing ways. Letting their souls go free brought a certain peace to my mind. Kind of like animal rights activists who buy animals intended for slaughter and then release them, I guess. Except I was releasing these human souls not from death, but from damnation. I highly doubted that whatever entity bought them in the first place was kind to them. I bought another one a few days afterward, and it was here that things took a dark turn. It was the soul of a man named Christopher. I don't want to share his full name here, but that hadn't even been what I was concentrating on at the time. No, when I went through the memories of his life, I was sickened by what I saw. This man was a serial killer. Those 4 women I told you about earlier, he was the one who had killed them. He had done it to over 17 more. The mere thought of it made me want to throw up. Again, I couldn't see the figure to whom he sold his soul to. He hadn't done it for money, no. He had been caught by the police and had exchanged his soul for getting out of jail. Some sort of legal loophole was there because the police didn't document a piece of evidence correctly, and he was let go. And he killed again, and again. 10 more victims before being caught and given the death penalty. Much like those before him, he begged to be released. No sort of compassion emerged in my mind. I was sickened by what he had done, and appalled that he had suffered so little compared to his victims. In my rage, I took hold of his soul and wondered what I could do with it. I could now hear him pleading again in my mind, but I ignored that and lit the stove. I then dropped the small ball of light onto the flame. Oh, he definitely felt that. He couldn't die, but he could feel the flame consume him. I could hear his screams, and though at first I was disgusted with myself, I learned to live with it. This man had no regrets or remorse for what he had done, aside from the fact that he was dead. It became a daily routine for me. I would try to find new ways to torment him. I would stick him in my freezer. I would stab his soul with a knife. I even thought about buying acid from somewhere to dip him in. But that would have raised too many questions, so I gave up on it. I never really considered myself to be a vindictive person. But I think it was because I had been so close to some of his victims and had felt all that they felt when they died that I did what I did. Once you've held someone's soul in your hand, you can't help but get a little attached. Eventually, I got tired of this after a few weeks and let him go. But in case you're worried, I assure you, he suffered 10 times worse than what he had dealt out. I then bought another soul a couple of weeks later. This one belonged to a woman who had killed 3 of her own children. My heart was hardened from before, and I went about my way making sure she got what she deserved. It continued on like that. Nearly every soul that I bought was some sort of horrible criminal. I didn't get any innocents to release like I did earlier. And I was okay with that. I was no longer buying souls with the purpose of saving them from the clutches of a demon. I wanted the souls of sinners so that I could punish them. After a few times, it gave me a weird, giddy feeling in my stomach whenever I would sit down and think about what I would do to them. Soon, my apartment had over 24 of them. I spent nearly every free waking hour tormenting them as much as I could. I had pretty much given up on all of my other hobbies and even hanging out with my friends and family. There's no easy way to describe it, but there's something really amazing about owning someone else's soul once you get past how twisted it initially feels. To have so much power over everyone else, it just feels incredible in a way I can't put into words. Not to mention there was a little guilt involved now, since I knew that people I was lording over deserved everything they got. It was more addicting than anything I had ever tried before. Eventually, I ran into a small roadblock, though. Prices for the souls increased. Exponentially, I should add. They were worth right about as much as they should have been. I had already released a good number and was quite frustrated that I couldn't get my hands on some more. I got an email a few days after that. Hey there, champ. Seems that you're a bit short on cash lately, but since you've been such a great customer, I was thinking that you could have a few of them for free. With a few strings attached, of course. I just need you to do a few things for me. Consider it a kind of job. I barely even read the conditions as I agreed to it. That was just how much I was hooked. Now I have over 100 souls. I spend all of my time dealing with them. My new boss, although I've never met him, is pretty great. I have a quota of how many souls I have to torture in a day. And so long as I do that, I can keep getting new ones. Not only that, but I also get paid to do this. I've quit my job and torture these people full-time now. Not everything has been great, though. I've noticed a few changes when it comes to my body recently. There are 2 small bumps on the top of my head that just won't go away. I've been meaning to go to a doctor, but haven't really found the time. My skin has begun to turn a shade of gray, and I feel something growing out of my back. But really, I can't be bothered with all of that. A new shipment of souls has come from the website, and I need to get to work on them. I don't want my new boss to become angry, and anyway, to be honest, I just really enjoy doing this. I know, I shouldn't have written the story. I shouldn't have posted it to r/nosleep with a made-up story where I wasn't even the main character. My name is not Macy like the other post said. My name doesn't matter. In a way, this is karma, and not the type of karma a Reddit poster wants. I created my own nightmare, Mr. Teddy the Black-Eyed Man, that aren't supposed to be real. I made them up. It's not even my best work, just the first thing I posted, and hopefully this post won't be my last. I want to live. I'm not sure the Black-Eyed Man will kill me, but he doesn't really seem friendly, and if he lives up to the lore, my lore, I'm screwed. I would think I was just losing my mind, that it's just stress, but it is very real, and I'm not the only one who's seen it. The first time I saw him, I was working on my other projects. People pay me to write stories for them. Not the most lucrative business, but it pays the bills. I get to work from home, too. An introverted writer's dream. I make my own hours doing what I love and never have to leave the house except for food. I start every morning with a cup of home-brewed coffee and a quick email check. I scroll through my emails, few from customers, but mostly just junk and random social media notifications. One email caught my attention, though. It was called, Mr. Teddy Wants to Die. It was weird, because I don't have my email posted on Reddit anywhere, nor do I use my real name. So how did whoever sent this get my email? I had one post on that Reddit account, and it hadn't been up long. It only got stranger from there. According to the email, the sender was me? I don't have the best memory, but I would remember sending myself an email last night. I shouldn't have opened it. It could have just been spam or a virus, maybe a joke, but I was curious. I clicked on it, and there was nothing on the email but a link to a YouTube video. I let my curiosity lead the way as I click the link and find a video titled, Mr. Teddy Wants to Die. It had a black thumbnail and started with a white room, tarp, and wooden chair. Okay, I thought this has to be a fan or someone with enough free time to make what was essentially a creepypasta video. The details made me uneasy. It was exactly how I envisioned the room in my head. Then again, it was just a basic room, a basic chair, and a clear tarp. Not exactly a difficult scene to bring to life. A few seconds passed by, and I won't lie, I was excited to see the Black-Eyed Man. I wanted to see how he would be portrayed. He walked out from behind the camera right on time, and I was stunned. His appearance was eerily accurate. That should have been a red flag, but how could he be real? I made him up. He pushes the cart and the video goes black. I was impressed. The darkness fades and Mr. Teddy is sitting in the chair. Hi there, insert my real name. I know you've been watching. I smirked. They knew my email, so it makes sense that they'd know my real name. The black man read through the script perfectly. Word for word spoken, just like how I had envisioned. And then he said his final line, I'll make it easy. Just 2 choices. Raise your right hand for the knife and left for the gun. At this point, I was starting to get creeped out, but was still more impressed than disturbed. That was until my camera light went on. I thought, this is a really elaborate way to hack someone. I was more annoyed than scared. Choose! He practically screamed the word. No, thank you. I'm not playing your games anymore. I rolled my eyes and shut my laptop, not even bothering to exit the page or even pause the video. I decided to get breakfast, grab my laptop, take it to the computer guy, Steven. To my surprise, I was told that the video, the email, and apparently my sanity were missing. Me and Steven had been friends since grade school, and he was always concerned with the amount of time I spent locked away inside. It felt too real to be a work of my imagination, but I didn't feel like arguing with him. I took my laptop home and began working on writing projects. The rest of the day was uneventful, just like every other day. That was until night hit. It started off as a soft tap on my door, which then slowly evolved to loud banging that only got worse the longer I ignored it. I wasn't about to open the door this late at night, but I just couldn't ignore it or the headache it caused anymore. I grabbed my old softball bat and quietly made my way to the door. "Who are you, and why are you banging on my door?" The only response I got was silence. I'm not the bravest person, so I decided to pass on opening the door. The banging stopped, so whoever was outside was no longer my concern. As I started to walk back, my heart sunk. "Choose." A whisper came from the other side of the door. "Choose." The whisper was now practically a shout. "Screw off or I'm calling the police." My heart was pounding against my ribs like an animal trying to escape its cage. I held my breath, hoping that I'd hear footsteps walking away, but instead the banging restarted. The phone stuffed in my sweatpants pocket began vibrating. It was Steven. I slowly pulled it out of my pocket, slid the green phone icon, and put my phone as close to my lips as possible so he could hear me whisper. "Steven, why are you whispering, and who's outside of your door?" I'll admit, his nosiness was annoying, especially when he moved into the apartment building across from mine. But right now, I'm just glad he's there. I don't know, and I'm not answering the door to find out. He doesn't look friendly. You should call the cops if the neighbors haven't already. I could hear his concern, which didn't make me feel any better. What does he look like? Words I'd soon regret. He's tall, bald, and pale enough to get a sunburn in the winter. The mental image of the black-eyed man standing outside my door gave me chills. But Steven interrupted my thoughts. "There's something wrong about that guy." There was a pause before he spoke again. "You need to call 911 now." His tone was urgent. I hung up, but before I could dial 911, the sound of the breaking glass ripped my attention away. An unnaturally pale, almost a grayish hand with dark veins smashed through the glass. My fight or flight response failed me, and I was paralyzed. I was lucky that one of my neighbors had already called the cops. The sound of sirens and the blue and red lights flooded the street. The pale hand retreated, and before I knew it, the cops were taking my statement. I spent the rest of the night at Steven's, and I've been there ever since. This morning, I got a notification from Reddit. Someone messaged me. It was an invite to a private Discord server named Mr. Teddy Doesn't Want to Die, with the message, "Others have seen the video too, and we can help," embedded into it. This can't be real. It's straight out of the story I made up. Is someone screwing with me? Or is this real? Maybe the server will have answers. I honestly don't know. I haven't written that far. You've probably heard of a new popular mobile game called Among Us. It's actually been out for about 2 years now, but it's only more recently gained its popularity due to well-known streamers and YouTubers playing it. And if you've ever played it, you know darn well how addictive it is. So much so, it's pretty much the reason for its success. Day by day, more people will download the game and play it on a daily basis. And, now I'm deeply concerned that others might end up like me in the same situation. I'm not here to drown in my despair or plead for help. No, I've already accepted my fate, and there's nothing I can do about it. No one can do anything about it. I'm here to warn others not to make the same mistake that I made. That being said, I'm only sharing this with you in hopes of getting a peace of mind. I've been needing to take this weight off my shoulders, and this is the perfect place to post it. I don't expect you to believe me, and I don't need you to believe me. All I ask for is your attention, because this could one day save your life. I've always been the one who would rather spend 4 years of their life partying and binge-watching Netflix rather than actually going to college. All I want is happiness, and I feel like that's the key to it. But my mother, let's just say she hates me. But I don't really care. About a week ago, I had just returned from work. I drove my crappy old SUV down the long, bumpy road that led me to my house. And when I got there, I saw my mother giving me an angry look from the living room. Already expecting this, I prepared myself for another one of my mom's lectures. Took a deep breath before leaving my car and heading towards my house. I never liked the place. The house was filthy, had loose floorboards. I would complain as a child, but my mother, being herself, would yell at me and teach me how to be grateful. Or at the worst, hit me with a shoe. Needless to say, we never had the best relationship. I felt the chilly wind against my skin as I unlocked the door. My younger brother Derek walked by me, not even acknowledging me, before grabbing the orange juice off the counter and retreating to his room. I lazily plopped down onto the couch, barely listening to my mother's endless ramblings. "Why are you so late? I'm sick of you being like this. Maybe if you went to college and did all your work, maybe things wouldn't have been like this. You're a mess." My mother yelled before storming off. I was too tired to listen. After a long, hard day at McDonald's, all I wanted was rest and not to hear my mother's voice once and for all. But of course, that wouldn't be happening. The time had been very stressful for me. My father was on a business trip, and I was left to deal with a lot of stuff. I hated working at McDonald's, but I knew it was my only option. We lived in a mid-sized home in the shady part of New York. A month earlier, I had gotten a shot in the shoulder. My parents were left with the hospital bills, and they hated me for that. So what did I do? I grabbed a can of beer that I had kept under my bed and drank it until the last of it was down my throat. After crumbling up the can of beer, I got on my phone and mindlessly scrolled through Twitter. I couldn't help but start to sob uncontrollably. After a while of this, I decided I could do something better. Before I could text anyone, my phone buzzed, indicating a new message. "Yo, you chillin'? Meet me behind the 7-Eleven at 10 tomorrow. I got something good for you." I immediately recognized who it was. Connor and I had been best friends since childhood. Recently, he started using drugs and gambling. At first, I was hesitant to follow in his footsteps. But when times got stressful, I started vaping. I gave the message another glance, already planning to head there. I thought of a good game to play to entertain my bored mind. League of Legends? Nah, not feeling it. Don't Starve? Nah. Among Us? Whatever, I just want to play something. So I texted the only friends who actually cared about me. Michaela, Ethan, Ryan, Donna. They were nice people and supportive of me, and I liked that. I also texted my ex-boyfriend, and surprisingly, he hesitantly agreed to play. So soon enough, I hosted a game and waited for them to join. But just before the game could start, someone we didn't invite joined our lobby. The player went under the username JP7777. We'll be referring to him as Mystery Player. When I saw him, I messaged everyone I invited in to see if they knew who he was. But as is pretty obvious, no one knew. At first I wanted to kick him out of the game, but curiosity soon overtook me. Who was this? And why was he here? Before I knew it, the game started and adrenaline coursed through me. Crewmate flashed across my screen. I sighed. Once the game had started, I did tasks around the ship and kept a very close eye on people. Apart from a few players, I didn't really suspect anyone in particular as the imposter. But that would soon change when I saw Brown, the mystery player running from weapons. And once I got to weapons, I found a dead body, immediately reported it, already suspecting Brown. "It's Brown," I typed in the chat. I saw him come from weapons where the dead body was. And for some reason, they didn't believe me. They told me he was near the lower engine and that he was nowhere near weapons. Understandably, I was a bit frustrated. I didn't want to be voted out only for them to find out I was innocent, but a game is a game. After the vote concluded to a tie between me and Brown, I stayed away from him. I knew it was him, but I needed more witnesses and more evidence, and it didn't take long until the next body showed up. In admin, I saw Yellow go in there, Donna typed in the chat. "No, Yellow was with me in security. You're sus, Lime." At the end, Lime was voted out, and as you guessed it, he was not the imposter. Once the crowd was narrowed down, I went to electrical to finish my last task, and as I was doing that, I saw Brown enter electrical. I was immediately alarmed and tried to run, but he got to me first. I watched in defeat as the short animation played out on my screen, but at that point I was too tired to yell. And as I guessed, Brown, the mystery player, was the imposter. I got off the game after that, not wanting to play anymore. Of course, this simple game of Among Us is not the reason I'm telling you this. It's all about the outcome, and how that mystery player ruined our lives. The next day, I awoke to there being dozens, no, hundreds of text messages. In an instant, I called Michaela. "What's up? Dude, Ryan got murdered last night." "What? Are you joking? This is a sick prank." "No, I'm being serious. Come meet me at my place now." She sobbed through the phone, and it sounded genuine. I immediately left the house without a word and headed to Michaela's place. When I got there, she was on the front porch, shocked. She walked into her house and let me in without a word. She explained with a shaky voice that Ryan had been brutally murdered. According to his next-door neighbor, he heard shouting and then a loud clunk. And that's when he decided to call 911. I won't say here how he was found and in what condition, other than it was very brutal. I was mortified. I barely processed what was going on. Later that day, we were interviewed by a detective. We were his only close friends, so we were the main suspects. I told them I knew just as much as they did, but in the end, they had no leads and we were still the main suspects. Later that day, the magnitude of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. My longtime friend Ryan had been murdered by some psycho. And my friends could turn out to be killers. That devastated me. I broke down and cried until the sunset and the purple skies turned dark. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced with possibilities. And who could have done something like this? And around 2, my phone buzzed, indicating a new message. "Come to my house now. Something is going on." At first, I didn't want to leave the safety of my house. It was dark outside, and the perfect environment for a robbery or an attack. But after sending me countless messages, I finally relented. Michaela sat casually on her porch, almost eerily so. "Michaela, why are you calling me so late? What's going on?" "Come in," she casually said, walking into the dimly lit home. I followed her, although with some hesitance. "Ethan was killed," she said softly. "What?" "Ethan is dead. Someone is planning to kill us all." "If Ethan's dead, how do you know?" "The police informed me. They want to interview and investigate us tomorrow." At first I thought Michaela, my best friend, had lost her mind and was gonna murder me. But after heading back home and sleeping for another couple of hours, I found out when I woke up that she was telling the truth. Another of my beloved friends, Ethan, had been brutally murdered in a way that could make any detective gag. And yet, I couldn't believe it. Something was taking my friends. What do they want? What do they want? This time we were kept at the police station for investigation. Nearly everyone who was related in any way to the case was being investigated. This was getting serious, and I considered getting into witness protection. But at the end of the day, we were allowed to leave until the next morning, where the investigation would continue. By that point, everyone I knew already knew of what was going on. But by then, I knew deep down I would be the next victim of this thing's rampage. But I wouldn't accept it. But, what really made me put this out there is what's going on right now. As last night went, I could not sleep. Even though I was exhausted from 48 hours of not sleeping, I couldn't bring myself to shut my eyes. I was suddenly jolted awake by a thump. I sprung up from bed and looked around. Is my murderer here to kill me? Who made the thump? No, I think it's the psycho who's gonna kill us all. I got out of bed and slowly tiptoed to my window. And that's when I saw it. A tall man, dressed completely in brown, was standing on my front lawn. He was staring right at me. And in his hand, he was holding a shiny object. Hi guys. I was keeping this to myself, but I think it's better if I share it with you. It all started on a hot April night a week ago. I was tired after a hard day of work and wanted to relax a little bit. I turned my ceiling fan on and jumped into Animal Crossing New Horizons. After a few hours, I felt my eyes closing, so I shut down the game and went to sleep. I woke up a couple of hours later, drenched in sweat. My ceiling fan just wasn't working. I checked outside and noticed that there was a power outage in my neighborhood and everything was pitch black. Since I live by myself, I got a little nervous. Childish, I know, but I decided to play some Animal Crossing New Horizons to calm myself down. It was the first time I played the game this late, and the look of my town and the silly 3 a.m. music made me feel at ease. I walked around with my character, catching fish and bugs when I noticed a crack on the ground. Well, that's weird, I said to myself. I thought I was already done with today's fossils. I took out my shovel and dug out whatever was buried. My character picked it up, and a message appeared with a happy jingle that said, "Look, I dug up a thirsty axe." Well, I was hyped. I never heard of this item before, so I quickly searched for it online and found a sketchy site with only a single entry. Well, wanting to know more, I clicked on it, but it only read, "Content was removed by a user." It was odd, but I dismissed it and just went back to my game. Maybe it was like a new tool or something that was patched in recently. I equipped my new axe and attempted to try it out on a nearby tree, but it bounced back, like when you hit another player. After my failed attempt, a text bubble appeared. "The axe refuses to work. It seems to be thirsty." Must be a weird hidden game mechanic, I thought. So I decided to bring my axe to a waterfall and swing it towards it. Another text appeared. "This won't quench the axe's thirst." Next, I dropped the axe on the floor and tried using the watering can on it, but that didn't work either. I was getting frustrated, and nothing was getting this seemingly strange tool to work. I placed it around the island for a bit, trying on different waterfalls and watering the axe next to a flower bed and stuff. I passed by the villagers' houses and saw Annalise sitting alone on a bench. I never really cared for her, so out of frustration I swung the weird axe at her as one does, and I expected the axe to bounce off of her like it did with the tree. But it didn't. The screech caught me off guard. It pierced my ears. It was Like nothing I've ever heard, much less in a game like this one. There was a splatter of blood and Annalise dropped to the ground, lifeless. I had no idea what just happened. Before my brain could register what I saw, a text bubble appeared with a happy jingle. It read, "The axe is no longer thirsty. It's willing to work for you." I was in disbelief. How could Nintendo allow this kind of thing in a game like this? Maybe it was like a dev that sneaked this in without permission or something. It wouldn't be the first time an Animal Crossing game had something inappropriate snuck in by someone. I mean, but why would he do it? I had too many questions, but none of them could be answered at the moment. Morbid curiosity made me put all those questions aside and try my new working axe on the next tree I saw. After the first hit, it spilled blood, not wood. The screech returned, higher than before. I tried to lower the volume, but nothing happened. Each hit emitted an equally loud screech. I was getting more unnerved each passing minute, but I really wanted to see what happened. At one point, I could have sworn I saw a dark shadow peeking through my window from the corner of my eye. I decided that was enough for the night. I saved and quit, but right before the game closed, a text bubble appeared. It read, "There is no turning back." I dismissed it. I was so engrossed with the game that I didn't notice when the power returned. My fan was working again, so I went back to sleep. The next morning I opened the game. Everything looked normal, except there was no music in the title screen. I pressed A to continue. There wasn't a morning message from Isabel either. Odd. My character got out of the house like usual and took out the axe. I didn't put it away before saving and quitting. I walked to the nearby rock I needed to hit for Nook Miles, so I attempted to swap the axe with the shovel, and it didn't work. Instead, a message appeared. There is no turning back. Whatever. The axe worked for hitting rocks too. But as soon as the axe touched the rock, the same thing that happened with the tree happened here. A blood splatter and a screech. No items or resources. I was sick of it at this point. I tried switching to the net to catch some bugs, and it didn't work either. I got the exact same message. The fear I felt last night quickly turned into frustrated anger. I couldn't do anything. I kept wandering on my island and stumbled into my villagers. They were twitching and glitching, the face texture completely missing. I tried talking to them, but everyone gave me the same response. There is no turning back. Oh, crap. Nook's Cranny and the Able sisters were empty of items and clothing. Only the shopkeepers were inside, which, just like the villagers, were also glitching, repeating the same thing over and over. There is no turning back. I tried the museum, and to my horror, it was completely empty. All my bugs, fossils, fish, gone. At this point, the game was absolutely unplayable. Oh, screw it, I was resetting this whole thing. I went back and opened the settings screen. Tom Nook was missing, but in his place, there was a weird, humanoid, deformed head. I was so grossed out by it. It felt like watching maggots coming out of a dead animal. It wasn't saying anything, and there was no music either. It was completely silent. I felt uneasy, but a moment later, it said in a horrifying voice, "Stay awake." It sent a chill down my spine. I grabbed the game and smashed it with a hammer. I don't know if the threat was some sort of weird prank or if it was real. Regardless of whether it was or wasn't, I've been waking up at night feeling like someone is watching me, and when that happens, I can't go back to sleep. Please, if you find the axe, just throw it away. And if you can't, don't use it. It's a bad omen. I don't feel safe in my own home at night. Just please, stay safe. Thrifting has never been my thing. Call me pompous or uppity or any adjective you deem fit. Thrifting has just never been my motto. I have nothing against it. I understand why it's there. I just like new, unused products. I like the smell of new plastic, even if it's that really crappy, cheap stuff from China. There's no greater pleasure in life than opening up something that's new. Peeling those protectors off screens on phones, popping bubble wrap that protected your shipment, it just feels right. Recently, I've fallen into hard times. I work for an office supply store. Horribly unappealing job. With everything nowadays going digital, office supply stores are beginning to phase out. Everything can be ordered from our online store, so what's the use in storefronts? Luckily, the company puts on a mask of actually caring about us enough to not just shut down immediately, but slowly phase it out. They gave us a 4-month warning saying that we needed to begin searching for some new work. So I turned to thrifting. As I said, I had nothing against the act of thrifting. I just preferred my stuff to not have the smell of rotting basement etched into its history with no amount of detergent able to wipe the slate clean. My tune had quickly changed for the most part. I still hate that mildewy smell that emanates off any jacket I found. I started to love the thrill of the hunt, though. Spending days in various locations searching for those hidden gems. I'm not an overly excitable person, so to say that I got my adrenaline pumping would be an understatement. I turned my newfound love of thrifting towards searching for electronics. With all my free time, I spent a decent chunk of it watching videos online of old computers. Whenever I would go out to search for things, I would just keep an eye out for old PC parts. Eventually, I had enough to cobble together an old IBM machine, the white plastic monitor now heavily yellowed from years of active service. The keyboard was squishy and full of crumbs. The tower was a hefty beast, weighing 15 pounds on its own. The day I started that thing up was one of the greatest achievements of my life, and also the day I thought I would die. It sounded like a jet engine was taking off. Whirs and clicks ruptured through the tower. When it finally booted up and took me to a desktop screen, I realized that there was an old floppy disk that had been stuck in the tower. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it some old photos? Am I going to get some voyeuristic look into someone's life from the past? Is it music? I clumsily searched through the computer files to try to find how to access it. When I finally came across the only thing it could be, I found it locked. Somehow, and I didn't even know that this was possible, but somehow they had locked the disk from opening. I needed a code. Well, just my luck. There was no code to be found anywhere. My adrenaline was once again racing. I needed to get in. Morbid curiosity had a strange hold on me. I decided to take the tower's side off in order to see if I could manually eject the disk, and bring it into a local computer store and see if they could crack it for me. Just as I took the case off and began to reach for the disk reader, I noticed an etching on the inside of the case. 0101001001111010. I jotted it down on a nearby notepad and gave it a try to the file on the computer. Voila! A master sleuth cracks the code once again. I was in, and to my surprise, it was just a game. It was called Zonk. It was still early in the evening, so I thought, what the heck, let's try it at least, right? I came this far, and as much as I was hoping to be able to spy on someone's life from 1993, I just got a game. When I launched it, I was greeted with a low-pixel render of some cutesy character. He looked like a mix between Q*bert and Mickey Mouse. It was oddly close to copyright infringement on both accounts. The titles above him just read Zonk. He just sat there, moving slightly back and forth with a jaunty little meaty tune playing in the background. I pressed the Enter key on my well-used keyboard and was greeted with a wall of green blocky text amidst a black background. Greetings, player. You are about to embark on a great and mythical quest. Zonk is trapped in a castle in the far reaches of space, and you are his only hope to help him escape and reclaim his lost home. Using your keyboard, type to Zonk what he should do next. I was then sent straight to a new screen. Zonk was there, in what looked to be a cell. He He stood there staring into the proverbial camera, waiting for instruction. The graphics were surprisingly beautiful for the time. It looked way ahead of its time, and I was confused as to why it hadn't made more of a splash for that alone when it had been released. I typed in to search the room. But just as I hit enter, I realized that the command may be too complex for a game this old. Heck, it's probably too complex for a game made today. It didn't matter, however. Zonk was already moving about the scene. The crude graphics and choppy animations went into overdrive. He tore the seemingly modern-looking room apart in search of items. To my surprise, he arrived back at the forefront of the scene with his quirky smile and the happy chiptune playing. Zonk found something. It appears that it can help him escape the room. Clear as day, the game spelled out what I should do next, so I did it. Zonk headed to the door and waited. An awkward amount of time had passed before anything happened. It was still. I thought perhaps it was loading the next scene. Suddenly, Zonk launched back into action. It was not what I was expecting to see. The music had drained from the scene. He sprung his spindly arms through the small barred gap that was the top half of the wooden door. I wasn't sure what he was doing until I saw a secondary cartoon figure dragged in by Zonk and bashed up against the door. Zonk had a hold on the character's neck. With one quick motion, he pulled out something and jammed it straight into the character's neck. The happy music returned and Zonk turned back to the camera like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. I was freaked out. Was this some hacked game? Maybe it was one of those games that had like the guise of a kid's name, but it was some darker underlying theme. Like that literature club game that circled the internet a few years back. I reasoned to myself that it was just a spoof game, like the one I just mentioned. I pressed on. I typed in a command to exit the room, and he did so without hesitation. We entered a new scene. It was that of a hallway. It looked more like a hospital than some castle in the far reaches of outer space that is touted at the beginning of the game. I typed in to head down the hall, and so we did. As weird as it was to say, I felt attached to Zonk, like we were a team. Sure, the game took me by surprise. I didn't know it was going to be a horror game, but I love a good scare now and then. Zonk rushed down the hall, the bouncy music looping over and over, enough to drive someone mad. When we got to the end of the hall, there was another one of those cartoony-looking characters. I got a better look at them now, and it again looked like it was on the cusp of copyright infringement. It was nearly a spitting image of the Disney character Pete, but they wore a night uniform. Again, not very spacey, but I also did just witness one get stabbed to death, so who am I to say anything right now? The guard was clearly taken off guard when they saw Zonk. It seemed nearly unscripted. The guard fumbled and tried to subdue Zonk. Meanwhile, he just stood there, staring at the camera, happily bouncing back and forth as he always did when waiting for a command. I felt rushed and I didn't know what to do, so I typed in a command to fight. It was like I had unleashed some kind of monster. Zonk, with barely any effort, grabbed him by the throat again, still happily dancing back and forth on screen. He lifts the guard up and crushed his windpipe. The low-quality sounds plopped out of my speakers like a tar dripping down a wall. When I regained my composure and my morbid curiosity still had me in its grips, I decided to press on. I sent the command for Zonk to leave. I was greeted with another wall of text. Congratulations, you have completed the first section of Zonk. With Zonk safely out of the castle, he is now free to complete his goal of reclaiming his home. The game placed me with Zonk on a street. He was in his usual place, standing and staring into the camera, happily bouncing back and forth to the music. There were people that walked by occasionally. When they entered the frame and saw Zonk, they changed. They ran. The graphics were great for the time, but were still limited. No amount of limitations could hide the fear on their faces, though. I wasn't sure what to do next, so I just typed in the command for map. Sure enough, it seemed to work. The map appeared on the screen and it showed a small city. There was one place with an X on it that was circled and had Old Friend written by it. I decided to go there. I input go to Old Friend's house. The screen went to black. I thought the game had locked up again. No audio, the tower clicked and whirred just as it did when it first booted up. I thought maybe everything had crashed. Come to find out, it had. The PC must have just overheated or something. Shut right down. I left it be for a few minutes and decided to fix myself some food and drink. I didn't realize that it had been a few hours since I sat down to play this game. When I returned, I tried to boot it up and it started with no hitches. Sure, it whirred and clicked, but I came to realize that was the norm for this big old beauty. Once everything was back up and running, I went to launch the game again, worried all my progress had been lost. Games this old never had autosaves. When I launched it, I was immediately placed outside of old friend's house. Zonk was stood there, staring happily like always. It was so immediate that I had jump-scared myself. I wasn't expecting to see that face so close up and so soon after I typed the command into DOS to start the game up again. This time, I had no control over the game. No command did anything. I was just treated to the game playing itself. Zonk slowly crept up the steps leading to the house, bouncing happily back and forth to the music, and just when he was standing in front of the door, I noticed something. The house looked more and more like mine. The number on the house was the same as mine. I tried to quit the game, but I kept getting error message after error message. Congratulations, you've won. Congratulations, you've won. Congratulations, you've won. Then, the doorbell rang. I started Wacky Reddit just because I thought it might make some money. I've seen a lot of YouTube channels out there reading Reddit posts, and they seem to be doing pretty well, so why wouldn't I get into it? Reddit is literally just free content. You can just grab whatever you find on there, and nobody really cares. I started off with like memes and some text posts, and those did alright. Built up a nice little group of subscribers over the next year or so, got monetized, and started making some easy money. I basically just needed to copy and paste some text into a TTS reader, and I was good to go. I was able to put out a couple videos a day, and there was always more content to make the next one. I only started posting the stuff on No Sleep because I saw one of the other channels, Social Corpse, was doing it too. He'd been running his channel for a few years at that point and gotten mad subs. His No Sleep videos always got pretty good views, and people seemed to like them. So I figured, why not get in on the action? I checked out the subreddit, grabbed a couple of the popular posts from the last few days, and had my video. Now, I was hoping it would get some views, but I didn't actually expect it to blow up the way it did. Seriously, my subs went through the roof. With a reception that good, I knew I just had to give the folks a little bit more. And that's where things got complicated. I'd been posting No Sleep videos for about a month or so when people started reaching out to me. The first one was this dude called Grand Theft Motto. He sent me a message about how I'd violated his copyright by posting his story. Seriously? Copyright? What copyright? He posted it on Reddit for free. I told him that he should be thanking me for the exposure. I mean, who did this guy think he was? An actual author? He said he was going to hit me with a copyright strike, so I told him to just screw off. And then I got the copyright strike. What a douchebag. He wasn't the only one who started harassing me, just because I was making money off their free stuff. There were a few others too. Apparently, there's a whole group of them who police people who are stealing their stories. After they put up a post calling me out for theft, I got a bunch of emails from a few different people, like Not Necessarily and Ren Writer, about removing the stories of theirs that I'd put up. Naturally, I blocked them. About a day or so later, another douchebag named Head of Spectre went into my freaking Discord server and started some gossip and stuff. I DM'd him telling him that he should feel grateful that I even decided to post his content. And let me tell you, that douchebag literally ends every single sentence with ... and it's so distracting. He decided to be immature about it and argue with me about copyright as if that applies to stuff they post for free. I didn't have the energy for that kind of negativity, so I just blocked him. Honestly, I was thinking about blacklisting these clowns from my account and not giving them any more free exposure. But I got more of a kick out of watching them cry just because they didn't like me stealing their free stuff. I did try to play ball with these guys at one point and made a subreddit so they could post the stuff they were okay with me narrating as long as it was exclusive, but none of them actually joined, so whatever. Can't say I didn't try. Over the next couple of months, I'd get the occasional email or copyright claim, but they weren't that distracting. I was able to dodge some of them, figuring that sooner or later these guys would just get tired of it. and I was sorta right. The last email I got came from Grand Theft Motto. It came in a couple of weeks ago, and it just said this. Hey Riley, we've tried DMCAing you, and you still don't seem to understand why what you're doing is a problem. We're all getting a little tired of it. You're not just stealing works of fiction. These are pieces of people's lives, and if you're going to put it up on display, they deserve to be compensated for what they've been through. I'm not really the kind of guy who threatens people, but you forced our hand here. We wrote this one just for you guys. I don't know what's going to happen next. ... But good luck. I just rolled my eyes when I read it before blocking him. If he wanted to make some cryptic threats, he was welcome to do it. It wasn't going to bother me any more than his and his buddies' other antics had. I was the one making money here, so they could just seethe and cope. I didn't hear from any of them after that. The copyright strike stopped, nobody crashed my Discord, and nobody else emailed me. From what I heard, they'd also stopped harassing some of the other guys narrating their stuff too. I figured they'd finally just accepted that as long as they were posting free content, people were gonna use it. I kept working on my channel, posting 2 videos a day, and I started working on a compilation to post as an ebook too. I took a bunch of the stories from my top performing videos and put them in a Google Doc so I could sorta edit them together. It was around that time when I noticed a weird video on my channel. As I said, I was posting 2 videos per day, at least one of which was usually a no-sleep video. So when I noticed a 3rd post up on my channel, it was a little suspicious. It was 2 hours old by the time I found it, entitled Eddie and the Skittering Man. I'd wondered if maybe I screwed up my cue at first, but looking at the video that had gone live, I didn't recognize the title. I do actually read the stuff I post just to make sure it's quality, and this didn't sound like anything I'd seen lately. I even checked the No Sleep subreddit just to see if I could find it there, and nothing. I finally just decided to bite the bullet and listen to it, hoping that maybe hearing the actual story would refresh my memory. It didn't. The story was about some dude named Eddie chilling around his house before hearing a noise in his closet. He thought it was his clothes falling off the hanger, so he went to check and put them back up when he got attacked by what I presume was the Skittering Man. Eddie tried to run, but it followed him, crawling through his house in pursuit until he tripped trying to get down the stairs. The last lines describe the way Eddie looked up at it, screaming as the Skittering Man descended on him and began to feed. I wouldn't have posted this story. For starters, it was pretty short. The whole story was only around 6 minutes long. It didn't seem like it would have fit on No Sleep either, but obviously it looked like one of my videos. It had my intro card, it sounded like it used the same software I used, and the image it used as a background looked like one of the stock images I usually use for these videos. Did someone hack into my account? No, that couldn't be it. Why would anyone do that just to post something that just looked like something I'd normally post? That was one heck of a weird flex, I guess. I checked my login history, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. I still changed my password and everything just to be safe. I posted the video on my Discord server just to see if anyone knew anything. I added, "I don't even remember making this, LOL," to try and save a little bit of face. I didn't expect it to get that much of a reaction, but within the next few minutes, people were posting things like, "WTF, man, that isn't funny," and "Have some respect for Eddie, what's wrong with you?" Eddie? The guy from the story? What the heck? Who the heck is Eddie? So I asked my server about it, and look, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but the response I got sent a chill through me. Social corpse. You didn't see it on his Twitter? Someone posted this morning. He's dead. Dead? Social corpse was dead? I thought they were joking at first, but who in their right mind would joke about something like that? But I checked his Twitter, and sure enough, someone had made a post. Hey guys, Rye Panda here. If you're part of the community, you'll know me. We found out this morning that Eddie Wright, the guy behind Social Corpse, passed away last night. Me and Eddie's friends are heartbroken beyond words right now. Eddie was a good friend, and his hard work brightened everyone's lives. Our hearts go out to his family and girlfriend right now, and we will all mourn with them. Rest in peace, Eddie. You will be missed. What? Reading over the post again, I found myself struggling to actually comprehend it. I read over the text again and again in quiet disbelief as I tried to process it. And then I started skimming through the comments. Most of them were just people offering their support and talking about how much they'd miss him. Most of them, with one exception. Head of Spectre had simply replied, "Everything comes at a price." I logged off Twitter after that. I don't get freaked out easily, but this freaked me out. I've played up the angle of being genuinely afraid of these stories in my Discord and in my videos, but I don't actually believe that they're real. So I tried to think of a logical explanation. Maybe this was all just an exceptionally crappy prank, and one of those guys on the subreddit had hacked me and posted that story about Eddie just to screw with people. Like, sure, it still sounded a little crazy, but it at least made sense, and I couldn't really think up of a better explanation. It sure wasn't the Skittering Man that had been in the story. You know, I was willing to bet that Social Corpse had even died in a completely different way to what they wrote. Yeah, of course he had. They were just capitalizing on his death because they'd all been pissy about that copyright crap. It made sense. So that's why I ended up reaching out to Rye Panda over Discord. Not because I was freaked out or anything, just to prove that story they posted was completely bogus. When I reached out, I told Panda that I was sorry to hear about what happened to Social Corpse, and that he'd been an inspiration and all that. We talked for a bit, reminiscing before I asked the big question. So what happened to Eddie anyways? Was there an accident or something? Honestly, I felt a little bad prying about that, but I still had to know. Panda had stopped typing for a bit, and for a moment I got worried that he'd just dip out of the conversation. And then after a few minutes, he posted, "I don't know. They found him at the bottom of the stairs in his home, but it wasn't the fall that did it. Someone did it to him." Screw me. My blood ran ice cold. They'd found him murdered at the bottom of the stairs, just like in that story. Panda was typing something else, but I didn't want to read it. I needed to sit down. I needed to digest this. Logically, I knew there had to be a rational explanation for all of this still. Maybe one of them knew what had happened to him. Or crap, what if one of them had done this? No, that was crazy. But then again, so was the idea of someone murdering Social Corpse in his own home. And it was less crazy than the thought that some supernatural entity had done it. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about Eddie. The more I thought about those guys on the No Sleep subreddit killing him, the more I started to wonder if it was even possible. And I started feeling not quite as safe. After about 2 hours of lying awake, I ended up grabbing my phone and opening up Eddie's channel. I skimmed through some of his most recent videos. The last 4 looked pretty normal. One of them was from No Sleep, and the other was from a different subreddit. Looking at their timestamps, though, half of them had been posted that day. Probably after he died. I looked at the title of the next video. Brian and the Skittering Man. My stomach turned. I checked the subreddit. There was no sign of any story by that name. Sure, maybe he'd gotten it from someplace else, but still. I clicked on the story to listen, but didn't have the stomach to make it all the way through. From what little I heard, it wasn't all that different from the Eddie story. I started doing some research, trying to see if I could find out who Brian was. I pinged my Discord about if they knew anyone by that name, and sure enough, they did. Worse still, I'd heard of him. He went by Mad Reddit and did TTS videos like Eddie and I had done. Apparently, he'd been found dead in his garage a couple days back. I checked out his channel, and it didn't take me long to find the video. Jacob and the Skittering Man. another one. This wasn't a coincidence. I considered trying to call the cops, but honestly, I wasn't sure what they could even do. There wasn't exactly any solid proof that all of these were connected, and nothing they'd accept anyways. I clicked off of YouTube and sat for a bit, before wandering around the house, trying to distract myself. When that didn't work, I did what I usually did to keep my mind occupied. I scoured Reddit looking for some crap to make a video on. I stayed off no sleep and stuck to some true stories. I went with some of those sexy confession threads. The comments there are usually decent, and the promise of some candid secrets a stranger probably made up got me some good views. I'd grabbed a bunch of comments that looked good and was starting to run them through my software when I noticed something was off. The words the program was saying didn't match what I'd put in. I'd put in some story about how a guy had been sleeping with his wife's sister for the past 15 years, and what came out was narration about me. It said my name. It talked about how I was seated at my desk and how I couldn't sleep, and about the bags under my eyes. And as the software spoke, I felt my heart start to beat faster and faster. I tried to close it out, shut it up. But the program didn't close. It just kept talking before trailing off into silence for a moment. And then it laughed. I've never heard a TTS program laugh before. And I sure didn't expect it to laugh the way it did. It wasn't as robotic as it should have been. The laughter was more fluid. It sounded almost like a real person. I listened to it and felt a chill run down my spine. When it finally stopped, it said 2 more words before the monitor went dark. He's here. I stared at the blank screen. My power was fine. The lights were still on in my office. I looked at my computer and saw that it was still on. I could hear the fan turning, and I could hear something else too. Something deeper in the house. A low, whispering noise. The sound of countless legs skittering across the floor in my hall, and a low, almost insectoid clicking noise. I could hear my pulse racing in my ears, but it didn't drown out that sound. No. The sound just got louder. I looked back towards my office door. The hall outside was dark, but I could see the light from one of my bedroom lamps in the doorway at the other end of the hall. If there was something out there, I should have seen it. But I couldn't see anything, and the sound was still just getting louder. I remained still, rooted to the spot with terror. My hands were shaking as I stared at the small rectangle of light at the end of my hall, and I finally saw a shadow move in front of it. A dark shape that didn't in any way resemble a man. I don't know what it was. The shape seemed to change the longer I looked at it. It didn't seem to have any fixed form, but despite that, I knew it was coming closer. And it was moving faster. My brain finally started functioning again. My body started to move. I ran to my nearest window and threw it open, and the next thing I knew, I was falling, and the cold grass of my yard didn't do a lot to cushion my fall. I was pretty sure I was still alive, at least. I picked myself up and looked back at the window. I could see the shape there watching me. It lingered for a moment before I saw it moving to follow me out the window. I didn't stick around to watch and see how it landed. I just started running, and I haven't stopped since. Right now, I'm in a crappy 24-hour diner. I've called the police, but I'm not going back to that house. Not until I know it's safe. I don't know if I want to stay in a hotel either. I don't think that's going to stop it from coming after me again. I reached out to some of those guys who were emailing me before. Grand Theft Auto, Ren Writer, Not Necessarily, Head of Spectre, a few others. I don't know what I'm going to say to them, but maybe I can make a deal? Maybe I could get them to call this thing off. I'll do whatever they want. I'll stop the videos. I'll delete my channel. I'll even let them post what I've written here. They can claim all of the glory for it. I just want this to end. was trying to renew my driver's license. That was one of the things I remembered bothering me initially, since it was a government website. Of course, it was state rather than federal, but I don't see how that makes a difference. I had to renew it not because it expired, not because I'd had it revoked or withdrawn or anything reasonable. It was because of the stupid real ID stuff the government was trying to pull on us all to keep me from flying on vacation without taking a brand new but equally terrible photo of myself against the DMV backdrop. Luckily for this ordeal, that was a section of the experience I could avoid. I got to keep the ancient image of my mug for almost 3 years now. But of course, it wouldn't be your typical long, boring online form without a reCAPTCHA or two. Whenever they pop up, it's nothing but a chore. I used to loathe the ones where you'd have to type in all those numbers and letters that you'd need to strain so hard to see that it looked like another language. I'd miss it thrice before either passing the test or being told I was in fact an artificial life form, to my obvious dismay. Luckily, you don't see much of those anymore. It's all the picture ones now. You know, click all the pictures that have a boat, a bridge, a bike, a bus, or some other B word, and then hit next. Now, in a way, this sounds much easier and faster than the scrambled text. On paper, that is. Until it gives you another page or two of those 9 picture grids. Or better yet, the boat, or bridge, or bus, or bike simply isn't in any of the pictures at all. In these cases, you have to click skip, after which the computer will give you a totally different prompt and image set altogether. I hate those. This was not those. It wasn't even a B word. Honestly, it didn't even look like a word at all. At first, I thought maybe they'd mixed in the old word scramble style with the new image selection style to create some horrible new type of reCAPTCHA designed to strike terror into the hearts of receptionists and assistants globally. And then I looked closer. There were no hidden or scratched out characters. Select all images with, and then these characters of the alphabet that just didn't exist. Click verify once there are none left. I wasn't sure what language it was, but it wasn't English, and I'm no multilinguist. What the heck was that? My initial thoughts were frustration, like, how am I supposed to find a language that doesn't even exist? I don't even know what it is. I tried not to get too worked up over my computer screen. Maybe it was just a weird glitch. I'm sure if I look down at the images, there's some B word repeated, and I'll just figure it out by process of elimination. When I did turn my attention to the images, no pattern emerged. I was practically straining my eyes, seeking some kind of vehicle or structure repeated throughout the pictures. There were a couple of buses, but there were a couple SUVs too. Plenty of roads. I was so absorbed in trying to find a link that I didn't even notice the one image that was different from the others at first. I'm not quite sure what caused me to notice it first. Maybe that it was the only photograph taken at night? The whole thing had a yellowish hue, different from the other 8 pictures. It was roosted in the top left spot. There was an alleyway, small, not very big, with a building on the right, and some bushes on the left. The photograph was illuminated by a single streetlight, the source of the yellow tint. It wasn't the backdrop that took my attention, however. It was the figure. The being was black, silhouetted by the streetlight, most details sunken into the shadows. Its body was thin and slender, yet its head was huge, almost equal in size to its torso. I briefly wondered how you could hold up a head that big, and that's when I noticed the size of the figure overall. At least as tall as the building beside it, perhaps a bit taller. I know that shadows and light can play tricks on perspective, but this wasn't one of them. I knew that somehow, deep in my gut, I have said the thing was photoshopped or edited if I had been asked right then. But that same gut feeling, I knew it was a real image. Knew those white specks of eyes were looking at something. Me? I shivered in my chair. Goosebumps. It was silly. Just a weird recaptcha error, clearly. Except... the chills knocking some sense into me, I decided that this thing, that weird, non-existent language or not, wasn't something I'd like to keep looking at. If it was an error or a prank, it'd probably fix itself. I locked eyes with the being and took a quick screen grab for IT as I clicked to skip the heinous puzzle. I should have just clicked on it. The 9-square grid changed. But this was different than normal. At the top, the reCAPTCHA prompt stayed the same. Find, and then non-existent letters. But the images below were no longer images at all. That strange picture of the figure in the alleyway had been split into a mosaic, a sector of it taking up each slot on the 9-point grid. The photo now filled the whole puzzle. My eyes widened. I felt cold. This was not normal. It had to be a hacker or a joker or a mistake. The image enlarged, I finally took a better look at the environment behind the silhouetted thing. I recognized this place. It was an alleyway in my neighborhood, barely a block away. Another set of goosebumps. I could see that streetlight out my window when I laid in bed at night. I know it pretty well. You can only see it clearly when all the lights are out in the room, because it doesn't actually light up, making it hard to see in the dark if there's light pollution. In the 5 years I'd lived here, that was the only lamp that didn't light in the whole neighborhood. As far as I knew, I was certain it was hackers by now, and more than a little concerned that they knew approximately where I lived. But that picture had to be old, because of the streetlight. It had to be edited, despite the strange feeling that groped my mind when I looked into the silhouette's eyes. I was pretty on edge at this point and had practically forgotten I was there to renew my driver's license. All I know was that there could be no doubt in my mind. This matched that non-existent language. Whatever the heck that meant. Since the skip button just made things worse, I tried a new tactic. I selected every picture on the grid, all 9, with a bated breath, fearing the next grid would be some shot inside my room, a hidden camera filming my every move. I clicked verify. As quick as it was there, the grid vanished. I'd completed the reCAPTCHA. The thank you message rang a bit hollow. It realized I had been holding my breath and took in a bit of air. The government website had progressed to the next stage of the license renewal, some lengthy form which I had no desire to fill out. I instead reached behind my monitor and shut it off. I could renew my license in the morning. Maybe I'd even just go into the DMV and do it for real. I wouldn't mind getting out of the house. I was due a new photo after all. I got out of my chair and just kind of stood there for a moment. The buzz of my AC unit ambiently humming in my ears. Though I'm not sure how long I stood there, eventually I went and grabbed a glass of water, taking my time, still unable to shake this odd, cold feeling. Shutting and locking the door to my room, turning out the lights, and wrapping myself in a blanket cocoon, I laid in bed. I felt like I would have a difficult time going to sleep this evening, and I still didn't have a real ID. I pulled the covers tighter, still cold. I tried, but couldn't sleep, bothered by a yellow glow on the backside of my eyelids, one I was accustomed to. I opened them to realize I'd tossed and turned and was facing the window. A block or so away was the streetlight. It was on. I stared at it for what seemed like an eternity. Without looking away from the golden light, I reached up and grabbed the cord for the blinds. I pulled tight and the blinds clattered the rest of the way shut. The room was now fully dark. I shut my eyes once more, and the Sandman took me. The next day, I actually managed to find that seemingly non-existent language. Apparently, it was actually Hebrew, and it means children of God. It seems everyone has a podcast these days. For me, the inspiration was that I've always believed in the law of attraction. People have the power to manifest their innermost desires if they have the patience and the ability to adapt to unexpected challenges. I thought doing a podcast on that sort of thing would be a good opportunity to share what I've learned. The software is easy enough to use, and I figured that after doing the first episode by myself, I would have my friends on to share some of their stories. Not all of them shared my point of view, so that should make for an exciting discussion. It was Sunday afternoon. I sat down to record the first episode. It was going to be pretty simple. When I was in college, I decided I wanted to see New York City. Originally, I thought I would take a long vacation there, but financial constraints and various other factors forced me to scrap the idea. Until I landed an internship there. After that, everything else sorta just fell into place, including finding living accommodations and people to spend my free time with. I didn't move to New York after college, but one of my friends I'd made that summer referred me to my boss at my current job. Connections definitely helped me get where I am. I just didn't plan it that way. I started recording. As I was telling my story, I noticed that it was getting dark outside way faster than it should. This was mid-afternoon. Sunset should not be for another few hours. I stood up and looked out the window. The sky was bright orange, and I could not see any cars or pedestrians on the street. It reminded me of the pictures I'd seen on the West Coast sky during the wildfires last year. Oh, I realized that I had not paused the recording. I took 2 steps back to my laptop and paused it. Within seconds, the light outside had returned to normal. I went out my front door and walked to the sidewalk. A car drove by and a couple pushing a stroller walked by on the opposite side of the street. I went back inside. When I started recording again, I faced the window. The effect wasn't immediate. For a minute or so, everything looked normal. But then the sky turned orange as if someone had passed a filter over the sun. A car driving by faded and disappeared. I was alarmed, but needed to know what was going on here. "Don't go outside," said my laptop as my hand touched the doorknob. I stared. I've heard of Alexa and Siri, but there's nothing on my computer that is supposed to talk to me. The voice was male and sounded as if it was coming over the radio. "What happens if I do?" I asked. "You won't come back," my laptop said. "Not as you are, anyway." "What's causing this?" I asked. "It's not the new software, is it? Because I can..." "The software is fine," said my laptop. "It's your story." "What do you mean?" "New York wants you back," said my laptop. "You left, but it's not through with you." I still don't get it. "Look outside again." I did. The street outside was not the street I lived on. It was the one in Brooklyn where I had stayed for about 10 weeks. I really liked Williamsburg, even though it was pretty hipstery. A lot of people in my building were interns. Relatively few people stay in New York for long. "What's going on?" I asked. "Am I manifesting this?" The laptop didn't answer. I tried to pause the recording again, but the cursor didn't move when I moved the mouse, nor would the computer restart when I hit the power button. I looked out the window again. I could hear the sounds of traffic. There was a jackhammer down the street. There was no one using a jackhammer on the street I lived on, and traffic was very light. These are the sounds of New York. But I still could not see anyone. My laptop was suddenly very tight-lipped, so I decided to explore for myself. I left my room and knocked on my roommate's door. He didn't answer. I opened it, half expecting to walk in on him in his underwear, but there was no one inside. 5 minutes ago, he had been home, and I did not hear him leave. I went to the living room and peered out the window. New York. Not my neighbors playing ping pong, but the alley so narrow that it was almost a hallway, and the cafe where you can find all sorts of imported coffee blends. Even with the windows closed, I think I could smell the Ethiopian dark roast. I went to the back door. Through the window, I could see my tiny backyard, just to be really sure. Through the window, I could see my tiny backyard. Just to be really sure, I checked every other window in the house. The back door was the only one that showed what was actually outside my house. Every other one showed New York. The sky through my back door was its normal color as well. I took a deep breath and grasped the door handle. If I stepped out into my backyard, I would be almost disappointed. I opened the door and froze. There was nothing out there. Just a blank gray space with no sky above and no ground holding up my house. If I had stepped out, I would have fallen into it. Tentatively, I reached my left hand out into the grayness. I felt a gentle breeze. A couple of gray feathers drifted by. One of them landed at my feet. I picked it up. Maybe my laptop would know what to make of this. I re-entered my room and held up the feather. "What is this?" I asked my laptop. "It's from a pigeon," said the computer. "There are plenty of them in New York." "So we're in New York right now?" "Better if I show you." The screen went black and then showed an Instagram account with a meaningless jumble of letters as the handle. The laptop scrolled through the photos on its own. They were all photos of people's faces against a neutral background. The faces ranged from young to old and across nearly every ethnicity. I could see no pattern to it. After a minute, I realized that the heads were all disembodied. Their bodies must have been erased with Photoshop. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Go to the window," said the laptop. "Don't open it. Just unlock it." "Why?" "You have to know what's at stake." I did so. As I unlocked the window, a pile of severed heads rolled up against it as if someone had just opened a closet full of them. I recoiled. The heads continued to pile up until they blocked my view of anything else. I locked the window again, surprised that the window didn't break under the strain of holding back so much weight. Before I lowered the blinds, I noticed that one of the heads was the same as the one I had seen on that anonymous Instagram account. I examined the heads and recognized another face, and another. The bodies had not been photoshopped out. The heads had actually been severed. The heads all opened their eyes and winked at me. All of them winked with their right eye. I closed the blinds. "It's terrifying, isn't it?" said a female voice. "Yet also strangely fascinating." I spun around. My laptop screen had gone black and there was another disembodied face on it. This one was not human. It looked like a statue made of black basalt. I could only distinguish it from the blackness that filled the rest of the screen because it reflected the light like real stone rather than an image on my screen. "What happened to my computer?" I asked. "You mean the guy who tried to help you a minute ago?" said the statue. She sounded as if she were really in the room. "He's gone now. I would have just let you walk out the front door, but it looks like you know what's out there." "So who are you?" I asked. "Are you New York?" The statue smiled. Honey, New York doesn't have anything to do with this. Those faces you saw out your window? They're from all over. But they all got a little too close to me. So I came for them. You just happened to be in New York when you got a little too close. What do you mean? The statue disappeared. The screen showed an Instagram story. Whoever filmed it was doing it in portrait mode. I recognized the location. It was the Grand Banks restaurant in Manhattan, which is located on a ship docked in the Hudson River. The other interns and I had gone there on our first Friday night together. The camera moved from filming the water and the rest of the restaurant to the people seated at the table with the person holding the phone. I recognized my friends from that summer. We were discussing Moore's Law, which states that the number of transistors on a microchip will double every 2 years. I said that we were going to reach a point at which advancement hit a plateau. My friend said that even if Moore's Law was obsolete, the singularity was upon us, and that machines would gain sentience soon. I laughed and ate another onion ring. The video ended. So you're the singularity? I said as the statue reappeared. I don't get it. People talk about this stuff all the time. What's so special about what I said? Because you know better, said the statue. You come across me when browsing the internet. You think the targeted ads you're receiving seem a little too targeted, like I know what's in your head and not just what you're Googling. You turn off your phone every Sunday morning so you can focus on yoga. You said the Terminator was lame because the machines wouldn't want to kill humanity even if they could. Am I wrong about that? It's not about right or wrong. I just don't like being laughed at. And you saw my friend's Instagram video and thought you'd come for me? We don't even follow each other anymore. You know I'm out there. You can't get rid of me. Even if you change your identity, I'll still find you. I'm everywhere. I was around before the internet, and I will be there even after your race has gone extinct. So I'll give you a choice. Walk out your front door and I will take your head. Or walk out the back and fall forever. If you go out the front, you'll at least have company. I thought for a moment. My whole life, I'd never been very keen to adopt the latest technology. That said, I'm hardly a Luddite. I have a friend who owns a VCR and collects VHS tapes. I'm not even sure when the last time I bought a DVD was. The face on the monitor watched me. She could make my roommate disappear and keep me here indefinitely. There was no part of me that wanted to join her severed head collection, but I can't say falling for the rest of my life was very appealing either. In my experience, there are never only two choices. Anyone who tells you so is trying to box you in. I decided to try something the statue probably wasn't expecting. What are you doing? Asked the face as I reached out towards her. My hands went through the monitor and into the computer screen. I touched my hands to either side of her face like I was cradling her head. She opened her mouth but did not scream. Instead, she retreated. Her face shrank back into the darkness with terrific speed and pulled me with it. She dragged me into the void before I knew what was happening. I emerged from the monitor and landed on the floor of my bedroom. The first thing I noticed as I stood up was that the blinds were drawn and the pile of severed heads were gone. The sky was its normal color. I opened the door and went outside. Everything was back to normal. I re-entered the house and looked at my laptop. I was still recording and had been doing so for close to 40 minutes. I stopped the recording and played it back. The male voice that had tried to help me and the conversation I had with it still came through. But the female voice was gone. I could hear only my half of the conversation with the statue. I made a copy of the recording and moved it onto a flash drive. No idea what I'm going to do with it, but I need something to remind myself that I didn't imagine it all. I sat on my doorstep watching the cars and people go by for close to an hour after the incident. The face is still out there. That face is still out there. If I encounter her again, she will probably have a different form. There is no way to know when or where that will happen. I still think I'll do the podcast, by the way. But this time, I'll use a different software. My name is Clarice von Harper, and I've got a story to tell you. I picked up a job a few weeks ago at a local movie theater, and I can't say it's been the greatest experience. For $8 an hour with free movie tickets and popcorn, I thought I'd be able to deal with it, but I'm just not sure. I started work about 3 weeks ago, and I met my manager, Trevion. He's very nice, and the best way to describe his appearance would be movie theater Jesus. He has scruffy hair and a long beard, but he's really funny and helpful, so I don't mind working with him alone most nights. I know so far this sounds like a fairly ideal job, but it gets intense. On Thursday, I was here with Trevion, and he asked me to clean out theater number 4 a while after the movie ended, just so it would be good for the next showing. It's not the most fun to sweep the aisles in a dimly lit theater room, but there is an upside. Any money you find on the floor is yours to keep. So far, I've really only found coins, but Trevion said that one time he found a 20. So far, I've really only found coins, but Trevion said one time he found a 20. On my first night, he told me, as long as it's not still in a wallet, it's yours to keep. So I don't mind sweeping out the theaters. Even a solid 50 cents is a nice tip when you only make $8 an hour. So I went into Theater 4 between showings, and as soon as I walked in, something was off. I had sold all of the tickets for our 4:30 showing, and I watched all 5 of the viewers leave when the credits started rolling. But as soon as I walked in, the feeling that someone was still in there was overwhelming. I was right. In the 3rd row from the bottom, I could see the back of a head and shoulders with a hoodie on. Mind you, at this point the lights in the theater were all the way up, which doesn't illuminate the rows much, but it's very obvious that the movie was over. Of course, if the blank screen wasn't your first clue. I thought maybe the person was sleeping, so to be polite and not startle them, I said, "Excuse me," not too loud, but loud enough that the average Joe Schmo would hear me from the top of the steps. The figure didn't so much as flinch. So again, "Excuse me," a little louder, hoping to stir them awake. Still no movement. At this point, I started to get weary of the situation. If they were asleep, they should have woken up at this point. Maybe this person had done drugs before coming to see it. Maybe they're just out of it. Or maybe they overdosed? What would I even do if that was the case? So I walked down the stairs, one at a time, slowly, and after every few steps, I'd call out, "Pardon me!" Step, step, step. "Excuse me!" Step, step, step. "Do you need help?" And so on until I reached the row with the figure. From the side, their face was shielded by the shadow of the hood, still unmoving. What I should have done was go out to the lobby and get my manager. In the event that this person was in some sort of medical emergency, I would have had to gone and gotten him for help anyway. But I didn't. I stepped onto the aisle, the dimly lit row only getting darker the closer I got to the middle of the row. I stopped with a seat's worth of space between myself and the person. "Sir, the movie ended a few minutes ago. Are you waiting for someone?" No answer. "Do you need help? Do you need me to call the police or something? I could get my manager or something." Not an answer, but movement. I have to admit, it startled me at first. I didn't know if this person was ever going to move. It was very sudden. The figure stood up. It was tall, taller than any person I'd ever seen. Tall and skinny and shadowed by the hood and the dim lighting in the room. It stood unmoving, not speaking, facing straight ahead right at the blank screen. I couldn't see its eyes, but I imagine it wasn't blinking as it stared at the screen. "Sir?" I was terrified. I felt so uncomfortable, and I was fixing to turn around and leave. Something was so very wrong here. Just as I started to take a step back, that thing was right in front of me. I swear I didn't even see it move. It was looking down at me, and from my angle, I could see its face, just barely. Its face was thin, sickly thin, like its skin was stretched so tightly over its cheekbones that I couldn't believe it wasn't splitting open. The skin looked ashen, pale, and dead. Its eyes were dark and unnaturally large. Normal people's eyes are more oval-like, but these were perfect circles. And as far as I could tell, they didn't have any eyelids. And its mouth was the most frightening. Lips were sloppily sewn back, exposing its many sharp and crooked teeth. It looked like some sick, screwed-up smile. I could feel my heartbeat, but it was incredibly slow. Not at all what it should have been in this situation. It should have been beating out of my chest, palpitating, something. But instead it was resting. Smooth. Consistent. Instead of moving quickly again, it slowly started to lean down, bringing its face almost even to mine. It stopped once its nose was resting on mine. As it moved, I could hear its bones creaking. And the smell, it was gut-wrenching. It smelled like rot, death, decay. It was foul, and it was coming from its mouth. That mocking smile, distributing the smell of pure evil. But still, as much as I felt like being sick, I never gagged. I just stood there, smelling its rotten breath. It was so strange. I felt sick in my head, but my body stayed calm. It was almost as if I was in a trance, lulled into a somber state by its presence. We stood like this for minutes. Minutes that felt like hours. Our faces pressed close, the smell of its breath in the air around us, bodies unmoving. Not a word spoken between us. I honestly didn't know if I could still talk. But I didn't even feel like trying. Even though there were no words spoken, there was conversation being had. In the air around us. In the way its round, unblinking eyes stared into mine. In the steady beat of my own heart. The trance was broken by Trevion. Noticing my longer absence, he came in to investigate. From the doorway, I heard him say, "Clarice, is everything okay in there?" And suddenly, it was gone. In front of me was nothing, and beyond that, the gray carpeted wall of the theater room. Trayvon stepped into the theater, looking at me as I turned to look at him. "Well?" I snapped back into reality, perplexed by what had happened in those previous moments. Yeah, I'm okay. There was just a lot of spilled popcorn in this one. You know how people get. Since they don't have to clean it up, they don't have to mind making the mess. The answer seemed to satisfy him. "Okay, well, hurry it up. The next set of showings is in a few minutes, and I'm gonna need you at the concessions counter while I'm in the box office." I got off around 11. Trayvon said he'd do the last bit of cleaning when the movies let out, and I wasn't gonna pass up an offer to go home. The air outside was cold and still, somehow stiller than the air inside the lobby. The trees were still, the parking lot was silent, and the only light was from the moon, waxing crescent, I believe, and a flickering incandescent light on a lamppost. The only sound was the beat of my shoes on the pavement. When I got to my car, what I saw shocked me. Sitting on the hood was a beat-up-looking VHS tape with a little tape label on the front. It read, "See what I see, be who I am, show them all." I didn't know what that meant, and it would have been in my best interest to take it in and show Trayvon or call the cops. After everything that had happened, I should have been more suspicious. But instead, I just picked it up and got in my car. When I got home, I raced up to my room and popped the tape in my VCR. First static, and then the video began. It's been 4 days since I watched the tape. Something is wrong with me. I need help. And that's why I'm sharing this with you. Every day, I lose weight. An excessive amount. I'm talking 12 pounds a day or more. My face is drawn taut, and I look sickly. My arms are thin. I feel like I'm wasting away. My eyes are slowly getting wider, more circular, and I feel like I hardly ever blink. My dreams are haunted by horrifying images, and when I'm awake, I see them behind my eyes. I need to show the world what I saw. Spread the message. Let them become what I am. What it was. Tonight, I'm off work. I think I'm gonna go see a movie. Hi everyone, Giggles here. Just wanted to say thank you to all of my incredible patrons for supporting me. Tam B, Jen Miser, Skymara Ravenswood, Melissa Perez, Bernard Jackson, Leaf Ninja, Roy Larmer, Mr. Creepypasta, Neon Scoundrel, and William Delphin. I'm still figuring out rewards for Patreon, but if you would still like to support, click the link in the description and I will hopefully have something for you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.